Hey, it's Norm from Tesla.com. I'm so excited. I'm here at Oculus Connect with Nate Mitchell, VP of Product. You know the routine. I'm asking him a bunch of questions. He may or may not answer them, but there's a lot of new stuff. So Nate, Crescent Bay. This was no one expected this. You guys announced a new developer prototype here. Can you tell me, first of all, describe what Crescent Bay is and what the goals were when you guys designed it?
Yeah, so Crescent Bay is our new feature prototype headset. It features a vast array of improvements over DK2. Updated ergonomics and comfort, integrated audio, a 360-degree tracking volume using LEDs on the back of the headset, new display technology. I think those are the main points.
And it's lighter.
And it's lighter.
Ergonomics.
Absolutely.
Right.
The ergonomics is a massive improvement. When you put it on, well, the strap technology is actually completely different. But when you put it on, you definitely feel much more like you're putting on like a set of ski goggles rather than DK2, which can sometimes be a little heavier, a little heftier. Right. And so that allows for a much more, again, immersive experience. But I think, and also updated optics. And really the important thing with Crescent Bay, as you bring that whole package together, right, all those enhancements, they combine to allow for a much, much higher level of presence. And that's really what Brendan talked about in the keynote this morning.
Your CEO said presence is delivered, for the most part, at least for a lot of people, with this prototype.
It's as big of a leap as we made from DK1 to DK2, as DK2 to Crescent Bay.
It's a big milestone, and he listed 5 things, challenges, hurdles, to get to that point.
Yep.
Let's talk about some of those things.
Sure, absolutely.
For example, resolution. Now I know you can't say exactly what resolution this is.
That's correct.
I know Gear VR, using the Samsung phone, has 2560 by 1440.
Yep.
This has got to be at least that. It's got to be good. I mean, if that's a baseline standard, there's got to be at least that.
Can't confirm or deny anything.
Okay.
What I will say about resolution is that a lot of people are coming up to us at the show and saying, wow, the resolution is so far superior to Gear VR. And
to Gear VR.
To Gear VR, to DK2, to any of this stuff, people actually have been asking me if it's like a 4K by 4K display and all this stuff.
Technically, that's not out there. Manufacturers aren't making that.
The most important thing is that, again, when you look at how the optics combine with the screen technology, combined with the industrial design and mechanical engineering, we're able to achieve an effective, like a perceptual higher resolution where you can't see the pixel structure, and that actually becomes more important in this case than the actual resolution itself.
When you say pixel structure, yeah, like the actual, the grid lines, the pentile arrangement, if you're using OLED there. And then John Carmack also talked about resolution not being all that important. For example, Gear VR, you render things at a lower resolution because it's mobile, but you can do things like mip mapping or work below the hardware layers to render things at different resolutions, content-wise.
Basically, yeah, we're using, so if you've tried like Oculus Cinema or Oculus Home or some of the experiences we've been building for Gear VR, we are able to achieve a pretty, I don't want to say high fidelity because that's actually something we usually reserve for the PC side, but an experience that really does surprise you in terms of the quality of the visual aspect. A lot of that is Carmack magic that really makes that possible, and a lot of work that we've done to optimize every bit of the pipeline from top to bottom, but I think it's paid off.
So when Carmack, he's working most on mobile.
That's correct.
We talked about a lot of things he was doing, tricks he was using, because he had to for Android, for the Galaxy Note, to make it look like a good 60 hertz screen, and overclocking that screen for 75 hertz on DK2. Does that stuff all trickle up to desktop when you guys do consumer version? When he talks about wanting to do things like programmable interlacing and give the illusion of a 120 hertz screen or a 240 hertz screen with a lower refresh rate.
Sure.
Does that stuff eventually?
Some of it does, some of it doesn't. For example, asynchronous time warp, absolutely we should be able to bring over to the PC side, and we actually have, I think, some of that working today. But one of the tricks is that we actually do have to work with graphics card manufacturers to get some of that stuff done, because some of the access just isn't there today.
So NVIDIA, earlier this week, they announced they want to commit to VR.
Yes.
And they said they've reduced 32 milliseconds on their end or something, and 10 milliseconds is on the OS side, and 5 milliseconds is on MFAA to MSAA, right? Does that, have you guys been talking with them? Does that matter to you?
So we obviously have a great relationship with NVIDIA, and actually NVIDIA GPUs, Maxwell GPUs, are powering all of the demos here at the show. That's about as far as I can go into it right now. I'm actually not the graphics expert, so I don't want to comment too much on some of the new announcements that they made. What I can say is that we're definitely committed to getting awesome, a super low latency pipeline, motion to photons, across all GPUs, right? So it's not something that is going to require an NVIDIA GPU necessarily. Although again, we're working with all the different manufacturers to make sure that we can do these things across the board.
But what they're doing will help according to that, it should help.
A better question for Carmack.
Got it.
Sorry.
If only I can get the Carmack interview, Nate. Make that happen.
We'll work on that.
All right. Optics. So new optics in
Yes.
here, and that contributes a lot to that effect. The better effect. The immersive effect.
So yeah, actually, I don't know what I can say about the optics. We're using new optics.
Using new optics.
And the optics have, optics is one of the most complex parts of the Rift in terms of every single, so when I came into this as a software engineer, optics just blew my mind, right? And so we're talking about, okay, so like we want to like expand for example, like the iBox, right? And I'm sitting in the room and we're like, okay, so if we expand the iBox, like what happens? And they're like, well, every other thing goes down.
Right.
And we're like, what? How can everything affect one another? Optics is easily one of the most complex parts when it comes to VR hardware and AR hardware, actually. And Brendan and Michael, I think, both touched upon that in their keynotes this morning. The optics we've selected here really do help reduce the visibility of the pixel structure, and that becomes the most important thing, because at the end of the day, like we mentioned before, it's about the perception of the perceptual resolution rather than just like. And
is that just like a very small part of the optics, or throughout? Is that?
It's a very different lens from what we've used in DK2.
Okay. Now, with DK1 and DK2, the field of view did change.
Yes.
Due for technical reasons, and that's something you guys are trying to come back from.
Yeah, absolutely.
With this one. Okay.
Yeah.
90 hertz refresh rate. So that was what the standard has been set out, right?
Yes.
You want sub 20 milliseconds of latency.
Yep.
90 hertz refresh rate.
Yep.
You think you've gotten to that with Crescent Bay?
So what I can confirm is that all the Crescent Bay demos are running at 90 hertz.
90 frames per second.
90 frames
minimum.
per second.
Okay.
No, steady.
Steady.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's minimum, but there's VSync involved,
Sure.
and there's a bunch of neat GPU tech going. Mm-hmm. So they are all running at 90 frames steady.
Okay,
and it does make a big difference. In fact, for me, I think it's different for every person, right? We talk about VR being this house of cards, and for different people, different cards cause different sensations of presence or a total collapse thereof. For me, low persistence really is one of the key breakthroughs, and the higher you seem to take the persistence, in my case, the more of a sense of presence that I get. Absolutely.
One last technical thing with the Crescent Bay, or just Crescent Bay in general. You're not saying whether this is a consumer version. You've always said that you want to be feature complete to the developers. So we don't know what the consumer version looks like. This is maybe not it, but at what point do you say the hardware is done good enough for development, and then so developers, when they work on something like this, if it's available to them, that it will be ready for consumers?
Sure. So I think with DK2, a lot of the core functionality, like we said before, the core building blocks that really for delivering presence, like on, for example, Crescent Bay, are actually already there. So for us, it's the same experiences are developed today, even on DK1, but really you need a DK2 for some positional tracking and some other things. Those are going to transfer over perfectly to either not really Crescent Bay, because whatever, we're not releasing that or anything, but onto the consumer version. And for us, I think there's still no plan to release another dev kit at this time.
So because Crescent Bay is for show here,
exactly.
Some devs maybe that you want to bring in to work on it.
For example, Epic definitely dogfooded it, built a showdown demo that we're showing here at Oculus Connect. So, of course, we're getting some feedback from a very small community of developers, but ultimately we're still on that sprint to the consumer version, and that's really where our focus is.
Okay, and you're making prototypes all the time.
Absolutely. Only a few of the feature prototypes actually make it out of Oculus to these shows, like Crystal Cove, the HD prototype, and now Crescent Bay. But we love sharing things when they are good enough to actually show, so it's pretty exciting.
And then on the platform side, interface-wise, the Samsung interface, that's coming to PC as well, the way you browse media.
Oculus Home.
Oculus Home, right?
Yes.
And what have you learned from that users will be able to take away in terms of developing their own interfaces?
So that is a massive topic that I would love to actually give a presentation on at some point. We have an incredible design team at Oculus. It's a mix of 2D and 3D and HCI, human-computer interaction. All of that coming together to create an entirely new VR UX, the user experience. We definitely haven't cracked the code yet, but at some point we will talk a lot about how we've designed Oculus Home to be as comfortable, intuitive, and just natural as possible. And we're definitely excited to talk more about that, but we could talk for a couple hours about that over drinks.
The current implementation of Oculus Home, where you're looking around with your eyes and tapping the screen on the Gear VR, that's not what you eventually want to get to. That's not cracking the code.
That's not cracking the code, but it's a good starting point that when people drop in, they absolutely understand immediately and are able to explore the platform rather than kind of getting frustrated and being like, what is this VR thing,
Got it.
So we have a long way to go, and it's something we're invested in super heavily.
Thank you so much, Nate. I haven't
my
tried
pleasure.
Crescent Bay right now. I'm going to go into the demo and try it and give some impressions. And
I really hope you like it.
Thanks for inviting us to this conference.
Oh, our pleasure. Thanks for coming, Norm.
Awesome.
All right, so here I am. I'm in the Crescent Bay prototype demo room. Now, Oculus did not let anyone take photos inside this demo room, and especially no photos of the actual hardware itself, but one of the PR reps let me take video. So I'm gonna walk you through my demo. It's about a 10-minute demo experience and what I thought. So right now, I'm being asked to take off my glasses. I had to ask them if I could actually use my glasses. The handler here told me it was best to take off my glasses and recommended that I do so. And so I did. So it looks like, at least for this prototype, no glasses. Now, I think like a DK2, you can wear glasses. I think it's ergonomically, the way they designed this model, maybe for contacts only. I don't think that's indicative of anything of the impending consumer version. And as you can see, in the back, there are dots. So the way the Oculus Crescent Bay prototype actually puts on your head, it's not so much the straps like the soft straps like the DK1 or the DK2. They're actually hard parts in the back. And that triangle in the back with the dots actually allows for positional tracking, 360 degrees positional tracking. Now, I buried the lead here because the big shocker as I walk into the room is I'm standing. And Oculus has said that the Rift is a sit-down experience. I don't know what this means for consumer version. I did have a chance to speak to Palmer Luckey about it afterward. He was very insistent that I signed a waiver about this and that I couldn't sue them if I was injured, and that the Oculus Rift, quote, is a sit-down experience. But the demo they showed here for Crescent Bay, standing. As you can see, there's a cord coming out of it, and it's going over the handler's shoulders. He's going to adjust that cord himself as I spin around, as I turn, so that I don't get stuck in that cord. I'm in a demo right now. The first demo is this inside inside a submarine, and I'm looking around. It's a first-person demo, and I'm looking, and there's no rendered feet. So for the demos are showing no rendered feet, but I am actually walking around. And you can see the bottom of the frame, there's actually a mat there. It's a plastic foam mat. I would say about maybe 3 to 4 feet long. It's square, and I was told to start by standing in the middle of it and told not to leave that mat. So that's the field of view for the camera. And what I want to point out also is that there's a new camera. So you can see on the top left of that screen, it's not the same camera as the DK2. It looks like a more robust camera, almost looks like a security camera or something like that. And they have it mounted pretty high up above my head. The second demo here, it was a fire pit. And it's a very polygonal design model. There's a fox and fire, and I was able to hear some of the sound. I want to get up close to it. I was looking up behind the tree, and I'm comfortably spinning around at this point, looking around. My body, though, from my past IR experiences, or VR experiences, have told me not to move too much, and so throughout the demo, I had to ease myself into telling myself I could actually do things like crouch. Now, the third demo, this is kind of like a noirish Arkham City style cityscape, and this is a demo that's supposed to really deliver presence, because as I walked in, I'm on top of this ledge, and I don't want to step over the ledge. I never really felt like I was going to fall off the ledge, but I did want to grab the pipes on the side, and I couldn't do that. The photographer actually just walked in. So Oculus did send in a photographer to take photos of all the press demoing, and we got access to those. So there's a railing there. I'm trying to grab the railing because I really felt like I needed to, but obviously it's not there, no haptic feedback. Also in this demo, no feet either. But standing on this high ledge, I never got the sense that I was gonna fall off. It did look really good. So here, this was it's as if I was in a cocoon with a bug. I'm in a disembodied space, and this is a really good demo to really look at that screen. So the screen resolution looked a lot better than Gear VR, which I used earlier that day. And here's a good positional tracking thing. I was trying to move around. The screen looks, I don't know if it could be higher than 1440p, but what was important is it didn't look distinctly pentile. It didn't look distinctly like an OLED screen with a pentile pixel arrangement. I'm not sure if it's because they're not using one or if it's because of the optics doing something. The pixel fill, the distance between the pixels, was pretty good. A very reduced screen door effect. And what people have described, and I would agree with them, is that there's almost a linen effect. If you look at a very high thread count sheet and you can see vertical lines, very fine, That's almost what I was seeing. And I don't know if that's an artifact of the, like a moire artifact on the lens, or if it was an actual part of the screen. And that vertical line actually would rotate as I focus on different points. So I don't think it's actually, I think it's a visual artifact based on the optics they're using. They're using asymmetrical lenses. It's not a sphere. It's not a full circle, their lenses. So you do get a pretty wide field of view. I noticed the field of view was wider than the DK2, but I could see the edge. I could see a curved edge on both my left and right side. This demo here was on an alien planet, and I was trying to look around, and there's positional sounds. I didn't even talk about that yet. Oculus has licensed now 3D sound from the University of Maryland, and it's also, I think it's software-based, so you can drop in mono sound files. A game designer can place those sound files anywhere in the world, and then the software computes it, and based on your head, where your head is, you will be able to hear the sound coming from one direction. In this demo, I'm talking to an alien. He's speaking right there, and as I spin around, I can actually hear his voice behind me. It was good. I think that the demo environment, because it was in their big ballroom, it was a little noisy, so it wasn't the best place to try to see if the sound quality was really good. But they're saying it's a really high quality sound driver. This demo I really loved. It was like a small city. I kind of thought of this as maybe Sim City of the future. I'm actually looking into a small, almost papercraft-like city. And there's a fire there. It's very fine details, and it's almost like Lucky's Tale, the demo they showed at GDC and E3, but even higher fidelity. And you can see I'm just hunched over because I want to examine those details. I really felt like I could with this screen. And with this refresh rate. So 90 hertz is what Nate told me earlier. That means the game is running at 90 frames per second, and that's going to require a high GPU to ensure that games can actually do that. Oh, this demo, it's a really cool dinosaur demo. I'm standing again in the hallway. Again, I always try to look down to see if my feet is there, and it's not. And it's like I'm in this abandoned subway station almost, and a Tyrannosaurus Rex is actually going to go run into the room and run. There it goes. There you can kind of see it in the background. The T-Rex is roaring at me. There goes the positional sound. Did sound like it was coming from above. And then it's going to run at me, and I think my body, the inclination is to actually avoid it. And avoid the legs and dodge the legs. I actually felt like I needed to do that instinctively. So I was talking about the frame rate earlier. I don't know if these games are actually being rendered at the super high resolution. So I think it's at least 2560 by 1440. But who knows if the games are actually being rendered at maybe 1080p and then scaled up. And you can see there's a mirror effect on the screen on what I presume is a 1080p screen behind me on the demo station. And it's even running on a smaller window than that. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was running on maybe something like a 960p resolution and then being scaled up. But again, they're running probably really good anti-aliasing on this. Running all GTX 980s is what Nate said, the new Maxwell cards, and so the frame rate was consistent. This demo was really cool. It was like a Tron World, I want to call it a keyhole demo. It was one of those like endless first-person runners like on an Android game, and I was really wanting to dodge all these barriers that I was flying toward. And the one jarring effect was when there's an area where I actually cannot dodge the barrier. And I felt like, there you go, I felt like I really wanted some haptic feedback there. So I could really see like a cool first-person, just endless runner type game, which is something I actually tried out on Gear VR. They had a first-person temple run, but it was only controlled using the controller, and you didn't actually do any controls using your head. So the demo ran about 8 minutes here, and one of the demos I think coming up, super cool. You actually saw your own reflection in the demo. You were a disembodied head, but you were wearing a mask. It was almost like an Alice in Wonderland set, and you were looking in a mirror, and you could actually move your head, tilt your head, and see your reflection. Now, this final demo that's running on right now, this is the big showdown Unreal demo. It's basically bullet time. You see, like, you're on a city street, police officers are firing at a giant mech beast, and you don't control your speed moving toward it, but I actually, as the bullets and as explosions hit the ground, I was trying to dodge all the pieces of concrete flying at me, the dust clouds. This is an incredible, incredible demo. And you can see it right there. I'm actually shifting my body weight around, moving around, trying to get around the flying debris. And I don't know how this would be implemented in an actual video game, but I actually really wanted to move around this demo. And there's a really cool part coming up where a car actually flips, Michael Bay style, basically, in a Transformers movie. And there it goes. It's a giant explosion. The car's coming at me. And I actually duck underneath the car, and I could look up and see that there was a passenger screaming inside that car. I thought that was really cool as demo. I'm really impressed at this point. And I'm actually trying to dodge around and hide behind people. Now you notice that I never actually turn full 360 degrees in a full rotation, and so my body did have some sense that I was being tethered to a cord as handler loosens a cord for me, but I did lose a sense of where the camera was relative to me, like where the camera and where the screen was. And so when I finally took this off, I was really impressed. So that's Crescent Bay, and I did get an interview with Palmer Luckey afterwards, so I'm going to chat with him in just a second.
All right, so I'm joined now by Palmer Luckey. You're the founder of Oculus. I haven't actually had a chance to speak with you before on camera and do one of our interviews. It's always been Nate.
Well, here I am.
Yeah, so I just tried Crescent Bay, and Nate did a great job hiding the fact that you guys changed it up. It was a big surprise.
Did we hide the what?
Hiding the big secret, the standing up. So when did you guys come to a point to decide that virtual reality and Oculus is something you guys can do standing up?
The Oculus Rift is a sitting experience. You should only use it while seated.
But the demo is standing up, so what is that to show?
Well, you signed a health and safety waiver that says that you can't sue us if you get hurt.
And I wasn't hurt?
Yeah, but the Oculus Rift is a seated experience.
So that's still what you're developing for, both in hardware and software side?
Yes, users shouldn't stand up. They could hurt themselves, and we don't want to be liable for that.
Got it. There's a lot of talk. You obviously went to the Valve room. And to describe the Valve room for people who don't know, it's a room marked with these like QR code markers basically, and it is a standing experience, quote unquote. But the big thing in their technology is that they got presence, or what at least Brendan called presence.
Sure.
How does your technology and what you've developed for Crescent Bay get closer to that or reach that point?
I mean, the hardware in Crescent Bay is in many ways superior to what Valve was using in their room. So. I don't know if I'd say it gets closer. It's getting there.
Are you especially proud of, for example, the optics or the screen? Is it the software?
Everything in Crescent Bay is still a work in progress. None of those are final.
Right.
They are getting closer to what the consumer Rift will be, but none of it is final. And everything in the consumer Rift, all that hardware will be either the same as Crescent Bay or better in many ways.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed was that screen.
Sure.
I don't know what resolution that is. I tried the Gear VR earlier, which uses a 2560 by 1440p.
Sure.
It looked like a different panel. It looked like an LCD panel to me.
Well, it's not. It is an OLED display.
Okay. But you're not saying whether it's a Samsung panel or something
No,
else?
sorry, we're not giving any specifications. But right now, like we are saying, it's a high refresh rate low persistence display, and right now OLED is the only technology that allows for low latency, low persistence displays that are of any use.
Now, one of the other things that we didn't get a chance to talk about with Nate is positional audio. That's something that you unveiled here. You're licensed in technology. Can you talk about that technology? And as a VR fan, as someone who's wanted VR, how important is audio, and what are the big hurdles for audio?
Audio is really hard to do in games, and it's never been given enough attention, largely because all you've been able to do is rotate and place, which means all you really need to do is be able to place things along a spectrum. Virtual reality audio, you really have to get it right, and so it's not just the audio tech that we're working with. Or not just the audio software in the SDK, but it's actually the entire stack. So from the actual headphone driver module to the amplifier to the digital analog converter to the engine, to the audio SDK, all the way to the effects that are being created. That entire pipeline is now optimized for virtual reality. And one of the reasons that built-in audio is so great, especially built-in very high-quality audio, is that game developers can know that the user has a certain set of hardware, and they can target all of their audio engineering at that platform, which means that they can get much better results than if they were trying to target a wide variety of hardware, a wide variety of volume levels, and a wide variety of different frequency response characteristics.
We're not talking about the old days of like hard audio acceleration cards or anything.
No.
Right. And the audio is optional, so you can, at least in Crescent Bay, you can pop it out. Is that something that you hope for the final version, let people use their own headphones?
We're not officially announcing anything about the consumer product at this time, but that is part of Crescent Bay. They are detachable.
And if you use your own headphones, would you get positional audio, or do you have to use?
I mean, you would. The SDK will continue to function, but a lot of people have this. A lot of people are actually assuming that they're low quality audio or dirt cheap audio because it's clearly like we didn't put any effort into the physical appearance of
the
them.
Driver and the
but the driver and the DAC and the amp and the entire pipeline is actually very high quality. So it's actually a very high quality audio solution. Very few people are going to have headphones at home that are superior to this. Particularly the people, like a lot of people say, oh, I have a gaming headset. And I'm like, well, your gaming headset is garbage.
Right.
Sorry. Like, but it's the truth.
Marketed as the gaming headset.
And most gaming headsets are terrible, and most are terrible in different ways. So yes, you can use your own headphones with Crescent Bay, but you're almost certainly going to have a better experience with our headset. And even if you have good headphones, let's say they are really actually superior headphones to what we have built in terms of their theoretical quality, they're not going to be tightly optimized for like these will be from the content developers. So
now, as you develop more prototypes, as you improve the software, where are you focused on next? Where are you happy with, and where do you think you need to devote the most attention? Is it the optics? Is it screen? Is it
optics are always a big challenge. We're working on a wide variety of problems, improving the ergonomics, the weight. This is a prototype, so there's a lot of weight that didn't need to be in there for a mass manufactured product. Also working on things like input that we haven't shown anything yet. Those are all critical problems to solve.
In terms of input, like game controller is what we've been using. The Samsung Gear VR has their the wireless controller.
Sure.
But are you hoping for a different paradigm of controls? Type of motion
Traditional
control?
gamepads are not a good virtual reality input device. You really need something better. Anyone who's ever used a keyboard and mouse can tell you, gamepads just don't stack up. They're pretty shitty.
And you're exploring all the options. Is latency in that in the motion control system, is that less or more important than latency in the head tracking?
In some ways less, in some more. If you have latency, at least you're not going to feel sick like you would if you had latency in the head. At the same time, we can use a lot of tricks for head motion latency, like time warp, that allow us to shift the entire field at the last second, as close to the end of the render pipeline as we can. But with input, you can't do that, especially because if you have multiple actual moving hands, you can't just warp the entire image one way or another. So you almost need to start inventing some kind of weird, geometry-independent time warp. But I'd say that it's going to be a very difficult challenge to make something that is what you really need to have good virtual reality input. It's not a keyboard and mouse, and it's not a gamepad.
And a lot of the demos you're showing, a lot of interfaces are for media consumption, looking at pictures, doing panoramic video. Now, none of that video allows you translation because of the way that the video are captured with multiple cameras.
Not currently.
Stitched. Is that something that you feel like we can overcome?
Yes, there's already people overcoming it.
Yeah, so they're capturing video.
Current spherical video capture is just normal video capture done in a sphere, basically.
Exactly.
You really need to have... The long-term future is going to be capturing the depth in the environment and then reprojecting the video captured in the scene onto all of that geometry, and that will allow for translation.
Oh, all right. What are you most excited for in terms of the next year or so? Is it
content? I'm excited to see, because DK2's only been out there for a few months, so it's going to be exciting to see a lot of these tech demos that people have made that are kind of like the starts of good ideas turn into full-fledged games. And also a lot of full-fledged games that are being worked on behind the scenes that we haven't been able to talk about. People are going to start seeing more and more of those the closer we get to launch.
And it will be native Oculus support as opposed to a patch or something built in.
Yeah, I mean, if the patch is native Oculus support, like they've gone in and done a redesign, that's good. But in terms of like just taking the game straight over and trying to make it work in VR, it's never a good thing, or very, very rarely a good thing.
Thank you so much, Palmer, for chatting.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming to Connect.
And we'll have more stuff on Tesla.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Norm.
I'm Palmer.
He's Palmer. He founded Oculus.